clear strategy. As Milton Friedman said, our job is to keep the ideas ready until the politically impossible becomes politically inevitable. And I do think that we need to have our ideas ready. We need to try them out in the real world, right? And this is where something like Yomea is important, because it's a laboratory. And you heard that from Mikas, right? Mikas last night. That they want to be a laboratory. They want to show people how it works, because it doesn't just work if they do it. They want people to pick up this idea. And there are many ideas like this. Last night I talked about community-controlled renewable energy. Which, and I'm talking about the communities owning the power themselves, and it being a potential, not a cost, but a source of revenue for them. And this is something that is working in some countries, working very well in Denmark, and interestingly in Germany. I mean, this is the irony, is that Germany is creating the conditions for Greece to extract more fossil fuels, more coal, at the same time as they're shifting very, very rapidly to renewable energy. So their coal companies are looking for new markets, and they're coming to Greece. Okay, so that's just an aside. So we need to have these alternatives ready, workshopped, for people to pick up. In terms of the framework, I don't know if you were at my speech last night, but what I'm saying is our framework has been given to us by science. We know that in order to keep temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius, which by the way is too much, we are already at 0.8 degrees Celsius and we're already seeing the impacts of climate change. 2 degrees Celsius is too much warming, in my opinion, but this is what all the governments of the world agreed to in Copenhagen, that they were going to keep temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius. I was in Copenhagen and I was opposed to it because that is basically saying goodbye to a great many island states. They need 1.5 degrees to survive. That was their slogan. The African delegates were saying 2 degrees was a genocide for Africa. Okay? So what I'm saying is 2 degrees is pretty crazy, but it is the baseline that you could possibly name as a target. The scientists have already done the work for us. They've told us how much carbon our atmosphere can absorb and stay below 2 degrees. Okay? What this means for us is that we need to, in a country like Greece or a country like Canada, we need to be cutting our emissions by between 9 and 10% starting tomorrow. Okay? In order to do that, every one of our economic policies needs to be measured against that. Because this, if we really wrap our heads around what this means, if we wrap our heads around the fact that the World Bank, the International Energy Agency, and PricewaterhouseCoopers are all telling us that we're headed now, if we don't do anything, towards 4 to 6 degrees warming. If we put this at the center of our platform, and I don't understand why the left doesn't understand that this lends so much urgency to every one of our demands. We're not saying we want public transit because it's more convenient. We're saying we want public transit because the habitability of the planet depends on it. That's a better argument when you can marshal all of the science behind you. We say we want more justice between the global north and the global south. This is not just because we believe this personally. It's because if we don't do this, if we don't support the global south in a transition away from fossil fuels, we have no chance of avoiding that 4 to 6 degrees of warming, because most of the growth of greenhouse gases is coming from China and India. Okay? So this is a problem that we cannot address without that kind of cooperation. And I became engaged in the climate issue because I saw it, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I saw it as an opportunity for reparations to the developing world. That this is something that has been a part of the left agenda for a very long time, which is how do we redress the colonial pillage that has created the deep inequality that divides our world. We know that there's been, that we owe an ecological debt to the Global South. We owe a colonial debt. We owe a debt for the transatlantic slave trade. All of these are debts that the Global South has tried to quantify over the years, and they've been unable to collect on those debts. And in fact, the opposite has been the case. We've said that they owe us, and we've used the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to further pillage their economies. So the thing about climate change is that it balances the playing field, because when they say you owe us a debt because you emitted carbon for 200 years that created the climate crisis that we are experiencing, they're not asking for charity. They're saying, if you help us with this, if you make the technology transfers and the financial transfers, then we will change our economies in ways that actually has a chance of stabilizing the climate for everyone. That's a much different negotiating position. I mean, we all need this to happen if we allow ourselves to wrap our heads around it. So anyway, I'm going on very long. I'm giving the same speech I gave last night, but I believe that we have a framework if we want it. It's waiting for us. It's science. That our demands could be so much more radical if we allowed ourselves to look at the science, which frankly I think we're all afraid of. I think we avoid the climate science like the plague because it depresses us, it scares us, we don't see the solutions, so we see the articles and we skip over them and we tell ourselves we've got more pressing problems. But if you really look at it, if you really let yourself absorb this information, then I think that what you'll see is that it will lend an urgency and a clarity to what we should be demanding in this moment.